Okay, so welcome back. I am sure you had very good discussions. Sorry it was all so short, but we will try to boil it down to 10 minutes report back. So really very, very, very brief, a few comments from each of the working groups. So I think I'm going to start with Blanca, who will report from group 4.
Yes.
Literally 2-3 minutes maximum.
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Blanca Casares, and we have been discussing about the needs and areas of improvements to support rural communities in green transition linked to the leader CLD method. We participants highlighted the relevance of LACs and the local networks members as an important tool for EU policies, for implementing the rural pact, and also for other policies. Participants are reflecting on the need of trusting the leader method, continues working on assessing their impacts and results to implement this green transition, but also other areas of topics, other policy areas in the rural side. The need to ensure long-term sustainability, and also scaling up leader initiatives. We have discussed different approaches for innovation for different sectors, governance systems, initiatives, way of using multi-funds, but no stopping there in innovation and then going to transformation and scaling up these initiatives. And finally, I would like to highlight important the involvement of young people, but also then we mentioned women that require broadening the scope for new sectors, but also the need to provide them with space for decisions, services, and general opportunities.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Blanca. That was very, very good, I think, in a nutshell summary of our discussion. Then from group 5, I understand it's Enrique, or is it Julie? Enrique, probably. Yes.
So first, I think we had very little time to cover such an important topic, but we knew that from the very beginning. So we had a flavor, and we focused mostly in 3 quick elements. First, we acknowledge that this is a very young concept, the smart villages, who landed into regulation under the shared management without having a full understanding out there of what this is about and awareness. So in many cases, it jumped into leader without giving additional funding to implement it and not the right knowledge or in other tools. But let's say that was the overall understanding. So the first question we answer is there is a big need to raise awareness at different levels about this concept. So at managing authority level, but also at local level. And here, let's say the eyes were not that much on the Commission side or on the EU policy support, but rather looking at the existing stakeholder networks and to what extent they are, through their structures, they are able to be transferring all the bulk of knowledge, experiences, and so on that happen already down to the local level, and as well to what extent they are structured to be able to, in the context of a shared management, to advocate for the right the policy design to support the smart villages in the right way in their context. So that was the first one. And another important point mentioned were about capacities of local actors. This is a point that to apply for funding. Sorry, this is a point that has been raised in several of our workshops now. And I think we have had this policy lab on accessing funding, where we have good examples there on how certain local areas are organizing themselves and being supported to be organized themselves to support local actors to have more capacities to access funding. But this has been raised as an important one, funding both to incentivize communities to work towards the smart villages approach, but as well to connect with other funds that are available, perhaps to pay some sort of large investment that are needed to support the smart villages initiatives.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Enrique. And from Group 6 on cohesion policy tools, I think it's Patricia who's going to report.
Yes, thanks, Ursula. So yes, in Group 6, we were discussing cohesion policy tools for integrated territorial development. We have a first presentation of the current programming period for the cohesion policy and the existing mechanisms with the ERDF, cohesion ESF, just transition, etc. And then we have had several examples on how they've been integrating these different instruments. We focused the conclusion on what are the key areas for improvement, and we found the four main areas. The first one is regarding the improvement for integrated governance and coordination, so the need for more local participation and holistic governance models to really make this integrated approach happen. So better coordination of the different governance levels, but also with the sectors, and the need for strength rural and urban linkages for the efficient planning of these different tools. Then we spoke a lot about the management of the funding itself, with the need for the simplification of rules to make them more accessible to rural areas, to better integrate the different funds such as the CAP, the cohesion, the regional funding. Several of the examples were mentioning the need to transition for a single fund LACs to a multi-fund LAC and improve governance of the strategies with, for instance, the integrated territorial investment, and how this is still really a barrier, an area of improvement, because the integration of these different mechanisms is perceived as a complex process for many member states. Many of them are still not taking this opportunity, especially those that the budget for cohesion policy is lower, and therefore we've been speaking about the need to improve awareness of the existing mechanisms, of the overall European strategies such as the green transition, how it connects with the local actors, with the local needs, to raise awareness about the added value of mobilizing these different mechanisms together, to disseminate more place-based expertise and know-how on how this has been done, like the examples that we have heard today in the policy lab. And the last point has been the need for alignment of the strategies, the cohesion policy, the different strategies, redefinition of areas based on leader, to the rural needs, to the rural development goals, which hopefully is something that we are trying to make today in the Rural Pact, bringing the different governance levels and hopefully the alignment of the different EU strategies with the rural needs.
Okay, great. Many thanks, Patricia. I see that we have actually touched on many of the topics that we have been discussing before, but there are also quite a few new themes that are coming up. So it's interesting that we're going more and more in depth. But for the moment, I would like Hartmut to represent the leader community and share with us his thoughts from his session. And then I would like to ask Edina Ocsko, who is representing the Smart Villages Network and very knowledgeable about smart villages and technical support to provide. And then Stefan K, who were working very closely with DG Regio and was present in the session on the cohesion policy tools, to share your main ideas, your key, let's say, the points that you would like to emphasize before we close the discussion, in terms of what should be done to enhance these territorial tools for green transition. What is scope for maybe creating linkages between those tools? There were already some ideas raised, and any suggestions, maybe recommendations is too strong a word, but recommendations and suggestions for next period's policies that you drew from today's discussion. Okay, I will start with Hartmut and then go in the order of the groups. Please.
Thank you very much again, Ursula, for giving me the word. So, yes, first of all, many of the findings we got presented this morning, I recognized really to be similar to my own personal experience in this field. And it was very clear expressed that this area-based or local-based approach is crucial to make these community-led initiatives for green transition successful. And keywords for this, for me, are trust between the actors and the cooperation of the local partners. And if these projects are successful, they can really help a lot in implementing the transition, in minimizing the reservation against renewable energy. We feel that there is a lot of these reservations in the rural areas, increase the acceptance, and to activate the people themselves to engage for the energy transition. So we make them from enemies to supporters of this. And this, I think, is a very, very important aspect of these community-led projects on a small scale. But of course, there are challenges, and we talked about the complicated rules we have. It starts with building laws, the electricity market, which is very complicated, but also procurement rules, which make it really difficult for these small-scale initiatives to be competitive with others. And I thought this was especially the case in Germany, because we like to make a lot of rules, but it was one of the things I got this day, that it seems to be the case everywhere in nearly all of the member states. So that means we need support to make these projects successful. We need support from experts maybe from the technical side and technical issues, but as well experts from the economic side, business administration. And that, for me, that was one of my own experience. It needs a very professional project management. And if we put these together, the area-based approach and this project management, I think this is leader. We tried to do this since more than 30 years, but we have to improve, and we have to adapt it on the issues which are before us at the moment. And this is, for example, the green transition. Leader can bring, and this was one of the findings which were reported this morning, bring the people together. We need the cooperation by, for example, of the municipalities in these projects. The leader can bring them to the table. And we need to keep the motivation of the actors on the local level high. This is also the job, that was my understanding of the job of LAG management, and to mobilize other funding resources, because LEADER is not providing enough for some of these. So this all makes clear that LEADER, and it was said before by Ivona, that LEADER is a very, very suitable approach to get into action on the local level. But LEADER needs some improvement. Ivona said that it would be very helpful if more of environmental representatives would be engaged in where it's not already the case in the LEGs. And someone else said, yes, a leader should be not only for the transition issue, but should cover all the issues of the rural pact. And that means there must be really a wide representation of the local people in the leader groups. So you asked for recommendations. We are talking so intensively about indicators for monitoring of the success of leader and evaluation, but we are not talking about the indicator of the composition of the legs. This could be one, and this could be an important one for covering the whole range of thematic issues of the Rural Pact. So, and finally, we talked about the future of LEADER and about the very close connection to the Rural Pact, to those measures which are not directly connected to farming, but to all the other issues of rural areas. In Germany, more than 95% of the people living in rural areas are not connected to farming. So we have to focus more on that. And yes, there was the proposal to bring it back to an initiative. And I very much support this idea to do that. So thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Hartmut. Okay, great. Quite, again, a wide range of takeaways from the leader group. How about the Smart Villages group, Edina?
Thanks a lot. So I would like to bring two key points here, one on policy and how we could deal with that in the next programming period to make some suggestions. And also in terms of building capacity, as we heard also from Enrique and Maria Cristina, that this is very important at the local level. So the critical thing is that what we see is that the current system is really not quite working, I think. And we all recognize that. I think we know, all know the principles. We know that leader and territorially based things are very, very important. But we see it's not quite working in the sense that it's not getting enough funding. The multi-funding is kind of not working during this period, or there are things which make it not quite efficient, but also leader doesn't get enough support in terms of financing from period after period, or that's what we feel. It's an effective tool, but it doesn't get quite enough support. So I'd like to be a bit provocative here, so to maybe raise new thoughts, but I think we really cannot go quite along with business as usual. I think we need a bigger reform. I think we need to discuss a bit more maybe about shared management with member states, because what we see that it's very good that member states got the flexibility to use smart villages, to use, for instance, leader, but in many ways they don't do it, or many countries don't do it, and period after period rural development doesn't get enough funds. So I think this is one of the key messages that I kind of think that in the future policy we need to start to discuss a bit new models. And actually I wrote a blog article on this, and we are discussing this with Smart Village Network members on what models could possibly work, starting from a dedicated rural development, but maybe actually there is a more inspiring one, which we call the Rural Pact model, which kind of assumes that there is no dedicated fund necessarily, but there is much more forced. Member states are much more forced to actually take seriously the multi-fund principle and supporting local territorial development. And I think the Commission has a big role in this, because we can keep repeating the principles, but if it's not quite working period after period, I think we need to think seriously, and we cannot say it's shared management and members, we can say, because it's true, it's shared management and members, they don't pick it up, but it seems to be not enough incentive for them or pressure on them to pick it up. So I know it's quite a strong message, but my colleague can put the article, because we are really interested to hear your thoughts on this you know, like how we can think of a new model which makes actually this happen. And I think we are keep repeating the same principles which we are all agreeing on. So that's one of the key messages. And maybe the other one I'd like to stress is capacity building. So we know that local communities very often don't have the capacity. This came out in our discussion, but we need to create the conditions to provide them with tools and to really help them, and not just in terms of project financing, but in terms of helping them to develop their ideas. And obviously LEADER can do a lot, but it needs more funding for animation, and it needs more funding to support smart villages, for instance, because often they are asked to do more with less funding or not increased funding, which is often argued. And to make them enable smart villages on the ground, for instance, LEADER labs need to get more funding and technical support themselves. That's one point. But the other thing, again, we need to think out of the box in terms of other support as well. For instance, we've been working on Horizon proposal directly with communities. And what we see that they are often elected, they don't access funds, they don't know this system of suitable to high-level organizations like the research institutes and so on. Yet there is a lot of innovation happening on the ground. And we believe that they could be made better partners in different projects if they got just the technical support to, for instance, prepare an application and the technicalities and the administrative burden. So we need to help them to do that because they've got the ideas to realize on the ground. And often the funding still don't reach them and they don't know what smart villages are because they never heard about it and they don't know the support system. So to make that happen, we need support to them, technical support. And actually, that's another thing we are trying to do now through the Smart Village Network. And my colleague again can put the link to that if anyone wants to follow up. We are trying to reinforce the projects we were coordinating, and Maria Cristina presented at the workshop, the Smart Rural project, the principle of that to support the communities, to communities strongly. And then just to conclude that it's very important, the Rural Pact is very important. So it's important in the model that we drew up in our proposal, that it's a communication between different organizations and different funds and different levels. I think it's a critical model. And I think it's very important, the platforms like this today, and also, for instance, the Smart Village community group on the Rural Pact, where we could really continue discussing these things. So I would really encourage those who are here to sign up for that as well. Thank you.
Yes, great. Many thanks, Edina. And indeed, when you join the Rural Pact community platform, which we have inserted the link, but we will maybe insert again, you can specifically go to thematic groups where you can discuss, and there's definitely a very active group on smart villages. So please, if you're interested in the topic, you can continue that discussion. Okay, and for here now, we move on to Stefan and his takeaways from the session on the different territorial tools for
I had some notes, and now it's almost becoming a takeaway from this discussion already, because I recognize points. And before I go to my points or something, it's just I also want to talk about capacity. Capacity is the thing at the moment. It seems everybody talk about capacity. And what Edina said, capacity is something that I came across with some research on where LEADER could be going and what LEADER could, local actions where could they themselves find them in the future. And there is also about capacity. And we often talk about capacity. We need to show them how things are done and maybe help them in doing complicated things, and often administrative capacity because the forms are so complicated and applying and certain things. Often I find it's about just quantitative capacity. So yes, we could all do this, but we are 1.5 people in this office and we do all these things. We don't have time to do this. We'd like to do things like engage in more complex project, maybe engage in transnational cooperation to learn from others, engage here in this platform where there will be local, but they don't have time. That's what I hear all the time from local actions, that it's this more actually finding the quantitative mass to do things and not being able, having the knowledge how to do the things. But that's completely another discussion in itself. From the workshop, difficult I wanted to focus on one thing that I noticed, and that how these tools are are place-based. There was the examples we saw are so diverse, and we would think, yeah, well, so what does link them? But they are linked through the fact that they're place-based and through the integrated approach. I think that is, when you heard from what we saw in Portugal, we saw in Greece, in Italy, in Czechia, it's a completely different focus. But what is, I think, common is the integration element. I think that is something that is quite interesting to see, and how these tools in some cases are combined. So this is an ITI, this is CLD, well, you know, it depends a bit how you operate your ITI, how you operate your CLD, and how you maybe combine them in a wider territory. We saw combinations of ITI and LEADER. Doesn't have to be CLD in the sense of using cohesion policy fund. It can be, so to say, only LEADER, or combine it with the domestic mechanisms, because in some countries you have domestic frameworks. Why not use them? They seem to be working, they are known, they're established, people know how to deal with them. So we saw this in the Italian case with the in-area strategy specific to Italy. But I think what my main takeaway is, what we learned is, which was also discussed in our group, is the hesitance to make use of the opportunities. The opportunities are there, we see them. So there's CLD, there's ITI, there's all sorts of things you can be doing with potentially lots of amount of money. But then you look at the maps, and there was one question in the group, seeing the map of the take-up, why they are not using this so well. And this brings me, and about the reasons are complexity and the lack of maybe critical mass to do certain things. Is it really worth the effort for such little money and all this? So what we then, though, we keep in mind is that this whole process is part of a multi-level system. Of course, if we speak to the local actors, they would like to use these opportunities to local action would like to use ESF funding to improve the skills for something. But the decision in this multi-level system is high up. So first we have the commission, but then we have the managing authorities, the member states in between, and they take the decision. So the maps that you saw, and not everybody's seen them, of where CLD is used through, or where cohesion policy is channeled through CLD, or where ITIs are. These are decisions taken at regional or national levels about the program, if the programs do this or they don't. So we need to convince them. So we can all sit here, and so also I know that we are also multi-level people, but the local level can say, yes, we would like to use a multi-fund CLD. But if the managing authorities don't give you the opportunity to do so, nothing is going to happen. I think, and what Edina also said, she mentioned, I don't know what you call it, I think obligation or compulsory or something like that. But indeed, maybe stick and carrot. We have a lot of carrots. They're all there, but we don't have enough stick. But maybe this is a bit cynical, or maybe it's also controversial, but we can look at LEADER. Take the example from LEADER. We say, learn from LEADER. And we are learning from LEADER, or people are learning from LEADER by doing urban CLD, for instance, or by doing cohesion policy funds through a LEADER system. It's great. But maybe we can also look at the obligations for LEADER. LEADER, I would imagine, would not be happening in every country if there wasn't an obligation to implement 5% of EAFRD to do so. So, and as a result, we have now 3,000 or so local actions group. If it weren't obligatory, who knows? Similarly, we saw the success, we could say, of having an obligatory cohesion policy allocation for urban mechanisms. And 5%, now 8%, and things are happening. Maybe not everywhere to the extent people want to, but they are happening because there is an obligation to do so. So how about we create an obligation to do so? And that is maybe my main takeaway from all of this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Stefan. Yes, the idea was really that we hoped that the experts would be provocative. Thank you very much for being provocative, all of you, because that is really where we start stretching our imagination and going a little bit beyond what is there, what is here, what is now, and imagining how it could be in the future. Stefan, you want to contribute now, or you prefer to
just
wait?
One short point that I often make or often find is it's how do we engage with those that are not engaging, so to say. Also, it's all very often in these events we all agree in a way, or because, and also particularly down to what's the local level, we have those who actively decided to register and to participate in the discussion. And I would imagine that whatever happens on the ground in the territories of the people now in this room is pretty well thought through and is proactive and so on. But how do we reach the other 80%? And I don't have an answer, but this is, I think, something that we would probably is important to keep in mind. But yeah.
Good point to keep in mind, indeed. Yes. Edina.
Yes, I think I can just reinforce what I was trying to put as a main message. I think local communities, including leader-led villages, do a lot. I think a lot of the innovation is happening there. We know a lot already about what they are doing. We just need to take one step further in terms of thinking of how to make the future rural development policy that it supports better these local actions. And I think I would encourage everyone to continue this very valuable discussion we are having here. And let's start to think maybe a bit even out of the box. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And then Hartmut.
Yeah, thank you. What I feel is that there is a very fundamental discussion about the future of the funds at the moment in Brussels. So, and I hope that we all together can take this as a chance. What I think is that we really need a dedicated fund on rural development and on the CLLD or bottom-up approach, and which follows very simple rules which are adopted to the needs and to the capabilities of the rural people, of the local people. And I feel that there's a huge potential in those local community initiatives, and let's take them and to realize them and to tackle the huge challenges we have in our world.
Okay,
That's
great.
my
Thank you very
contribution.
much. Maybe that links up with what Joanna has just been saying in the chat, that the people who have not been involved, like the one that Stefan mentioned, is simply because they don't know about those different possibilities, or they haven't been asked the right question. That's another option. I see also that colleagues from Ecolis were drawing attention to their manifesto on community-led innovation, which is another maybe a piece of the puzzle to mobilize different types of stakeholders to really get into more territorial approaches and to address green transition. Okay, Patricia, do you want to bring up some of the most, let's say, top
47 ideas there, and I think that pretty much in line with what's been discussed in this very interesting panel, the simplification of the funding to boost social innovation that is happening, but for it to flourish more, capacity building, the social aspect and versus the technical aspect, and raising awareness and the use of different platforms. We can, for instance, with the top of votes, less requirement for small local projects, small scale, and for instance, the comparison with the Horizon Europe that is centralized and that it has less requirement than a leader for a bigger budget. There are other comments about funding for sure. Social aspect, I think we've mentioned a lot of how to engage those who are not in the room, how to bring people together, how to create the trust. This is as important or more than the technical aspect. Capacity building has been mentioned a lot, developing local skill, promote social innovation, social entrepreneurship, capacity building programs. There is this reflection about the future, perhaps of the long-term vision for rural areas not being eclipsed again under the wind of agriculture, but the rural development is precisely there. Again, for the funding, less complexity, the long-term funding is mentioned several times, how we ensure the sustainability of all this social innovation on the ground after the project, how we move from innovation to systemic change, how we make this long-lasting. And then the different roles that the existing networks can play. For instance, the Rural Pact in supporting networkings for IDIs for with integrated strategies in rural areas. How the leader can also implement Rural Pact at the local level. The need for more tools, again, multi-funding for small-scale projects being simplified for leader. And we can go on, but I think that it's pretty much with around this capacity building, raise awareness, mobilize the existing networks that we already know to reach out to those that are not there, to build capacities, to really highlight the social aspect in the rural areas. and the key topic of the funding.
Okay, great. Many things. Thanks, Patricia. And you can continue putting in your ideas. We will almost until the end of the event. I mean, at a certain point, we will ask you also to do evaluation, but until then, you can put in your ideas. We will look at them when we will prepare all the reporting from the event, so it will not be lost. I'm also thinking that, don't know if we have time, actually, Enrique, if you'd like to give us another chance for some of the panelists, very briefly, just to comment on, but not everybody, just maybe volunteers. If you want to comment on some of the points in the Slido very briefly. Maybe while you're thinking, I can also bring up my own comment, which is that I listened to what Maria is saying, that very much depends on the decisions of the managing authorities. If they want, if there is a will, they can make use of all these tools. And at the same time, I see this idea that a Rural Pact can act as a networking for example, for ITIs and other such instruments. I can just say that from the experience of the different networking that I have been involved in, networking between managing authorities helps a lot in encouraging them to take up certain tools. Building their capacity is as important as building the capacity of the local actors. So there is still scope for improving the tools at the EU level by offering stakeholders just an opportunity to exchange and say, oh, this is working in Greece, why can't it work in Denmark, or vice versa?